Today, we did 7 things to our Nintendo Switch, so you don't have to. Basically, what we did is just some silly, real-world style durability tests. Look, we are not a pro-level channel doing scientific tests. We just put it through some basic stuff. Stuff that maybe would actually happen to it in the real world. We saw how much you guys just really didn't like when we did all this mess to a DualSense controller, so we decided to do it again. Also, please note, gameranx made me do this with my own personal Switch 2 I bought, and I hate them for that, but they're paying me back. Plus, we actually have a weird friend that likes to refurbish stuff, so we're being as responsible as we can be. Like I said, we did 7 things, so let's see how the Switch 2 survives, starting off with number 7. This is just the sit test. We figured it was really basic. We thought about how a Nintendo Switch 2 would be used in a household by a young one, or possibly an adult who just threw it on the couch, you plop down, you sit on it. It happens all the time, right? How many times have you sat on your phone, your remote? I understand the Switch 2 is much bigger than that, but there's potential. It could happen. We plopped the Nintendo Switch 2 down on our couch, and we had a roughly 190-pound man sit right on it at a couple of different angles. While we did have concern about the Joy-Cons potentially popping off or the joysticks kind of getting messed up, nothing happened. Like I said, this was through multiple sits, different angles, fast, slow, even kind of shimmying around on it. The Switch 2 definitely smelled like farts, but it totally survived fine. Next at number 6, one of our biggest questions was how easily the Joy-Cons will just be ripped off. As you know, with the Switch 2, the Joy-Cons no longer slide off on a rail-style connection. Now they just plug or snap right in. You release them with the pull of a button on the back of the Joy-Cons, and that's it. So when holding it, you can't help but just wonder how easily can you just yank these things off without holding the release button, because the connection, while it does seem kind of magical, it doesn't seem as resolute or rock solid as like the rail system. Still, it's been holding up pretty good, and essentially what we did was just try to hold the device and yank the Joy-Cons off, straight up. And believe it or not, they actually pop off pretty easily. When kind of pulling from the bottom of the Joy-Con, you could pop those suckers right off without holding the release button. We don't recommend doing that. It probably will lead to some long-term damage, but they just kind of ripped off a little bit easier than we expected. Don't get it twisted though, this is not something that you're gonna be doing by accident, even if you're getting sweaty playing a really intense game where you get frustrated and really squeeze the thing. We don't see that happening, but just know that you can just kind of yank these guys off pretty easily. Next at number 5, the liquid tests. We did kind of just like a regular old spill right on top. You know, say you're gaming on your kitchen table, you knock over a drink. In our case, it's just a big old cup of Mountain Dew Baja Blast. But yeah, so essentially we dumped it. We made sure it essentially hit all the major components, both the main unit, the screen, and both of the Joy-Cons here. This is terrible to watch. I was not happy doing this. Again, I did not want to make this video, but here we are. And to our surprise, the Switch 2 held up perfectly well. Our biggest concern was the liquid getting into the nooks and crannies of like the Joy-Con buttons, getting deeper in there and causing a problem, but we've had no issues since. After like wiping it off, the thing performed totally like normal. Also, the Mountain Dew didn't stain or discolor anything or even ruin the matte finish on the Nintendo Switch. It wiped right off and it was like nothing ever happened. Now at number 4, something we did that was absolutely disgusting, but hey, look, I think the reality is a lot of kids play with Nintendo Switches. You know, it's a family device, and kids have disgusting hands, let's be real. They're grubby little things, and so what we did was we put Doritos all over our hands, just absolutely disgusting, and then played a bunch of Nintendo Switch 2 games and just saw how that went down. Along with that, we then also covered our hands in dirt and mud. I hate that I'm even saying this out loud, but like we covered our hands with dirt and mud and we played with the Switch for a while, and then, yeah, here are the results. This did genuinely surprise me, because this is where I always think a lot of damage can happen, but thankfully, the Nintendo Switch 2 is pretty simply designed. There's not a ton of little crevices and cracks and design details for this type of grime to get stuck into. We did have to clean it up, wipe it down, but that dirt, that grime, those potato chips did not affect the joysticks, but more importantly, that grime over the face buttons did not affect the pressing of those buttons. This is something that we had a little bit more of an issue with the DualSense controller. This required a more intense cleaning. Some of those buttons did get a little gunked up. Here with the Nintendo Switch 2, it ended up being totally fine. I think it's just Nintendo knowing that they're building this device for a family. Plenty of adults will be using them, but the reality is a lot of kids are going to be using them. So, you know, it ended up being surprisingly durable or gunk resistant in this instance.
That's my favorite move. Yeah. Every time. Gets him every time.
Next down at number 3, we did do a light scratch test. We kept it pretty simple. You know, I see a lot of videos online where people will scratch test new iPhone or Samsung phones and do all this crazy shit. But in the reality, I think the only thing that's really going to scratch your Nintendo Switch is stuff that's around you. Your keys, a zipper from a backpack or a bag or whatever. So that's what we did. I took basic car keys and house keys, 2 different metal types, and, you know, just essentially rubbed them all over the Switch. Dangled them, drew on the Switch screen a little bit, and then along with that, we also tossed the Nintendo Switch 2 in a bag filled with zippers, cables, and car keys. Shook that all around, took it out, did this quite a bit, probably spent a good half hour on this, and yeah, the Switch 2 screen didn't scratch. You love to see it. We were cringing the whole time we were doing this, and honestly, we expected it to scratch much more easily. Thankfully, the screen does have a built-in screen protector that, like, you don't see, you're not supposed to remove, and it does seem like that does work. There is a little tiny scratch on the screen, but that's actually going to be a result of another test we're going to talk about in a little bit. Now at number 2, we did a drop test, specifically, in this point, for the Joy-Cons themselves. We did this basically the same way we did it with the DualSense tests. We sat down on a couch, held it at normal height, and dropped it from about 3 feet. We did this dropping the Joy-Cons from 3 feet 3 times. Totally fine, the device worked, no problem. Then from there, we dropped it 3 times from a height of 5 feet. From there, using the device again, totally fine. Then we did it from 8 feet. Why would we be dropping your Joy-Cons from 8 feet high? I don't know, but it could happen. You never know. We dropped it from 8 feet 3 times, and the Joy-Cons were totally fine in that instance. Surprisingly too, like where it tended to hit, either on the side or the bottom of the Joy-Con, it barely even got scratched up, which was really impressive. Along with that, it's important to note that all the functionality worked. We found it was important to test the mouse functionality because I assumed that would be the first thing to break. But believe it or not, in our example, like afterwards testing it, it totally worked fine. So at least physical damage wise, it seems like these things are fairly resistant. Stick drift and all that other Nintendo stuff, that's a whole other story. Now down at number 1, we did a drop test, okay? Yeah, so we did the same heights as we did in the previous test, but we didn't do it 3 times, because honestly, we were scared. I'm sorry if I failed you guys, but essentially what we did is we held the Switch first from about 3 feet, a sitting position, dropped it, and it totally survived, no problem. Then, from 5 feet up, we dropped it, and the Joy-Cons popped right off. The Joy-Cons just seems like they have a tendency to pop right off of the device in certain instances. But other than those Joy-Cons popping off, flying off, no actual damage or problems. Then from 8 feet, we did drop the Nintendo Switch, and one of the Joy-Cons, the left Joy-Con, did not survive the fall. It did absorb a significant portion of the landing, and because of that, it did pop or kind of blast open at the bottom with some of the components sticking out. Even still, with this, the Joy-Con did end up working when we used everything. The Nintendo Switch itself, the body, the device, other than a small scratch on the screen that you can see here, that's very, very hard to photograph because it's so small, that's the only damage, really. The Joy-Con that was busted open when plugged back in did function perfectly fine. Just one of those situations where a controller explodes and you gotta kind of shove everything back in and squeeze it shut. Thankfully, gameranx is gonna pay me back for the bill from our refurbishing friend. I'm not too happy about, but hey. The Switch 2 just fared better than we expected in these pretty normal, simple, kind of dumb tests. Look, will the Switch 2 survive a hydraulic press or a microwave? That's for other YouTube channels and scientists to check out, but we threw it on a couch, we sat on it, we dumped Mountain Dew on it, we got Doritos all over it, we dropped the Joy-Cons repeatedly, we tried to kill the thing with keys, and the Nintendo Switch 2 It was just more resilient than we expected. So don't try any of that at home, of course, but now at the very least, you know, whether you're an adult who uses this thing on the go, or maybe you're a parent and you're giving this to your young child, you can rest easy knowing that this thing can at least withstand a couple of blows. Again, we did this dumb stuff so you don't have to. Hopefully it helped. Let us know in the comments what you think. Let us know if you have a Nintendo Switch 2 and if you've had any problems with it. We'd love to hear your feedback, anything like that, down there. But thanks for watching this video. If you appreciate the pain we went through, clicking the like button helps us out. We really appreciate it. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.